All right. Now we have kind of a different kind of angle, and we're getting a lot more light in here. And at 5, I'm not going to get too much of a sense of tone. You see, I'm going to do it over here. Now there's the angle his head's going to be at, so I have to make my cranium. Remember, this is always going to be perpendicular. It's a right angle right through the center. So that's going to be my eyebrow line, and it's got some perspective on it. Look at that. Look at that. That's going to be great. And I made this line a little bit on the long side. So my jaw is going to probably end up more up here a little bit. But let's see. Now my eye line is going to be in the middle. I got to keep an eye on that. Because your brain really doesn't want you to put the eyes in the middle of the head. And I talked about that in the last tutorial. Now I'm seeing a nice curve right here. I'm going to end up adding to the top of his head, I think. I'm seeing a little bit of a divot right there, and I can put his eyebrow in and just use an outline. I'm seeing these two little lines. There's some shadow underneath there. So if I put his eye in, I'm seeing his eye being kind of just a dark shape. There's a shadow that comes down like this, and there's like a crescent shape here. I'm going to put a little bit of his pupil in. And there's maybe some shadow underneath it too. Now the ball of his nose, I'm going to get a little bit closer, not as close to the edges over there. It's just going to be right about here. And this is going to angle back, and this is going to angle forward. When you speak distinctly. See a little bit of underside of his nose, you're going to have that little piece of structure again. In this instance, I'm seeing his nostril be very much of a curved shape. I'm seeing a little bit of his other side of his nose, and I'm seeing a little bit of that nostril, so I can put that in too. Just a very little bit. It's almost like a continuous line down like that. Make it be a little curvier. Now his other eyebrow is an angle down, which I also like a lot. And if I draw this shadow in, I can figure out where his other eye is going to be. That might be a little bit close. Yeah, it's going to be right over there. I'm going to move that back to the right a little bit. This eye seems to be kind of less open, which I like. I like it. I'm going to put some shadow right under it right away. There's all this space that looks pretty good. I'm going to try to get a little more shadow in here, like that. I'm seeing kind of a lot of highlight right here, so I'm going to make that be a little lighter. And then let me make an adjustment to this line. Line is the line I start building everything off of, and now I think it has to be a little bit wider. Put his beard in. I'm just seeing a little bit of the side of his face right now, not really. That's going to be right about under his eye, right there. I like it now. His upper lip seems to be kind of long. And again, I'm going to see some perspective. Just like on the eyes, I'm seeing the same sort of curve. Once you establish a curve, you have to continue throughout the face. And again, I can put some tone up there. And make his beard stick forward a little bit. I like that. Now, if I figure out where his hairline is, I'm not going to end up being so narrow like I was in this previous drawing. And I'm going to see that be just more of a diagonal. And then his ears are going to merge right at the side of his head, just like that. His face is going to be kind of a little bit in front of his ear. just about running out of time, so I think that's because I put in some tone. But 5 is a little bit tricky for me to do drawing and talking in tone. It's going to be something like that. All right, very good. Now we're going to get into some expression. We'll be talking more about that later. But this does have a lot of perspective on it now. If I were going to think of this as a barrel shape, it would be leaning like this. I'm not drawing this very dark because I don't want it to be around forever. But this is what we're going to do. So if I know it's this angle, that's going to be my eyebrow line. That's the same thing as the barrel shape I drew. His jaw is going to come down, maybe not that far, but let's just see. If I put his ears in, his ears are going to be much higher than his eyebrows. You can see his eyebrows angle. This one angles a lot. This one's just a little bit on the high side. And the ball of his nose is going to be right down there. It's a little bit lower because of the angle of his head. I'm seeing the tip of his nose actually hang down more, and that's also because of the angle of his head. His eyes actually would be very close under his eyebrow, so I'm going to move that up a little tiny bit. I'm seeing a lot of curve on the other side. That's also, you guessed it, because of the angle of his head. The other eye is even closer. This is the dark side of his face. And I'm seeing a lot more shadow over here. His mouth is going to be a little bit closer to his nose because of the angle of his head. Seeing his lips kind of pushing forward. That's going to make more of a rectangular sort of shape. See his beard look a little bit different, so that's cool. Seeing a lot of the top of his ear, seeing some hair detail here, and make his head be a little slightly more pointed. We're seeing more of his hairline. I'm going to put a little more tone on this side. And again, we're going to have a little bit of tone right here, where his nose meets the side of his face at his cheek. I'm seeing a little bit of tone here on his cheekbone. And I can put more tone over here, because that's going to be the dark side of his face, and that would probably be about time. All right. Now we're going to do one more. Oops. Let me not move my pad. Let me not mess everything up. All right.
Is that okay?
That's great. So again, we're going to have an angle. So I'm going to put in 2 lines to indicate the angle. I like it so much, I'm going to put in 2 lines. I'm actually going to use a more square shape. That's going to be where his eyebrows are, and his ears are going to end up being quite low. That's where his eyebrow is going to be. His other eyebrow is going to be up here, and just make a nice little curvy sort of shape. And the ball of his nose is going to be quite high. Look at that. It's going to be right there. I'm seeing... I'm going to make it higher. I think it's actually higher than that. This is often the trickiest angle for people to draw heads, because you're seeing the underside of the nose. And people don't like to draw this angle, and so they tend to draw it kind of small. And you're like, okay, well, if I have to draw the underside of the nose, I'm going to make it be small, just not too overwhelming. And that looks even more weird. So be careful about that. Now his eye is lower because we're seeing a lot more space between his eye and his eyebrow. And that is, again, angle of his head. I'm seeing another line back here behind. This is structural. It's actually his eyelid being on top of the shape of his eye. And the underside of this is going to be relatively straight, like that. Make that nose be kind of bigger. I'm going to put some indication of this little pointed shadow right here. Now his mouth will be the opposite curve as we had there. I'm seeing a lot of his upper lip. Put some tone on that. And just a tiny amount of his lower lip. Look at that. See these angles here. Because at this angle, we're seeing different sorts of information. His ear is actually going to line up with about the tip of his nose. You're seeing a lot of that ear. And just a little tiny bit of this one. That's kind of angled weird. Yeah, that is kind of angled weird. Putting his neck in here is going to help me get this ear organized. That's just a little big. That's okay. That is going to be where his other ear is. I don't even know about that. Okay, so I can put in his hairline. That'll help me also figure out this ear thing. I'm seeing a hard line there. Actually, that's just going to be kind of a curve like this. And over here I'm seeing, again, we're seeing his head. We're seeing the hair pop out back here. And I need to get some beard information in here. It's not going to come down that far, actually. There we go. Just about like that. These 5-minute heads are good to get a good sense of structure and some level of detail, but not too much. So I'm going to put a little tone in these eyebrows. I feel like his head's getting kind of wide right here. I don't think it is. There we go. Now that's when I run out of time. There. That's so much better. Very nice. All right, we're going to try a few longer poses now. We'll get a much better sense of what's happening with light and dark along the planes of the head. Then we'll talk about the planes of the head.